of course, I always say, which I still say is true to this day, I saw Smokey and the Bandit at the movie theater, and that made me want to be a truck driver as a little guy.
Landline now. Welcome back. People get into trucking in many different ways. Some are generational, raised by trucking parents and growing up on stories from trucking grandparents, ready to drive by the time they hit 21. Some have simply always loved trucks, ever since they were kids, even with no truckers in the family. Some spend an entire career in another field entirely, but hear the call of the open road later in life. And then there are those who find trucking as part of a career in the military, eventually turning it into their post-military civilian occupation. Today is the beginning of something we're calling Mission Military Appreciation. It's done in conjunction with Military Appreciation Month and is part of OOIDA's Truckers for Troops program, raising money to send care packages to our troops overseas and now to help veterans who have come home through the Veterans Community Project. So we're taking a look at trucking and the military, and we're starting by talking with one of those truckers who started in our armed forces, OOIDA Executive Vice President Lewie Pugh. Lewie, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you served in the Army. Tell us a little bit about your service. I mean, how did you decide to get into the military?
Oh, I guess it's something I always wanted to do, expected to do, followed to do. You know, my grandfather and his family's all the way back's been in the military for a long time, so we have a family history, I guess you could say, of that. And then and it's just something that I felt like and was sort of raised that that's what you do. When you get to a certain age, you go to the military. I did it. My baby brothers did it, so it's just sort of a family thing, I guess you would say.
So how did you end up driving a truck in the military? Was this just something you were assigned or that you volunteered for?
No, you could, of course, you take a test and they tell you when you pass your test and how you score, what all you can be in. And I guess you have what jobs a whole bunch of jobs you could choose in your ASVAB at the time I was in. I assume it's still the same, but I guess I don't know. But with that being said, I went in wanting to be a truck driver because, I guess as you said, people come into trucking from different ways and different ideas. I came into trucking sort of a lot of those that you covered. My dad drove a truck. My grandfather's. My one grandfather drove truck for a little while in Oregon before he was going to college and stuff like that. My other grandfather drove truck through the Depression and then drove milk truck on and off as a farmer. And then we had a farm and had trucks. And so I always loved trucks. And of course, I always say, which I still say is true to this day, I saw Smokey and the Bandit at the movie theater, and that made me want to be a truck driver as a little guy. So all those things. And so it just was sort of a natural thing, I guess, when I went into I guess when I went into the military, I wanted to be a helicopter pilot, to be perfectly honest with you, and fly Apaches. And I tested well enough that I could do that. And my eyesight, all that stuff was good enough. But when I did my physical and went to the job part of, as you're joining the military, and told them that I wanted to be a chopper pilot, they started to explain to me, you have 30-some weeks of this training and 30-some weeks of this training and this is Valentine's Day of my senior year of high school. So I'm getting out of high school. And they're talking about all this schooling and stuff that I have to training and how much long to become a chopper pilot. And I was thinking to myself, I've just gotten out of 12. I'm just finishing up 12 years of school. The last thing I want is more school because school wasn't always my favorite thing. I liked my vocational school, but as far as regular school, I wasn't big on it. But with that being said, they're telling me all this stuff. And this counselor lady, I remember she goes through all this stuff. And I said, well, how long do you have to go to school to drive a truck in the Army? Because I kind of like to do that maybe too. And she said, well, that's 6 weeks. And I said, sign me up as a truck driver. So that's how I became a truck driver because, like I said, I always wanted to go into trucking. I always loved trucks, and of course, I drove trucks on a farm a little bit, and had the trucking background. That was, I guess, my calling. But when I went to the military, like I said, I really thought it'd be cool to be a chopper pilot until they started telling me. Now that I'm 50 years old and look back on life, that school really wasn't that long, But when you're 18 years old and can't wait to get out of high school and go on with life, because I actually left for basic training the day after I graduated. So the day after my graduation, I left for basic training. So I was ready to, even in February at that time, I was ready to be done with high school and go on with the world.
So what are some of the places you were deployed as a trucker? I mean, where did you do this?
I was fortunate, lucky person, never left the good old United States of America. So knock on wood, we were deployed for Somalia when all that happened. And a few days before our deployment to leave is when the unfortunate stuff happened with the Black Hawk helicopter over there. And then everything got frozen and we never went. But I was fortunate here, served some active duty time, and then reserve time. I finished out in reserves in my hometown. It was great. And so, yeah. But fortunately, like I said, was very fortunate because I got into the military. I graduated high school right after Desert Storm. And so really there wasn't a lot of conflicts in the time that I served. So, like I said, I was very fortunate.
And a lot of time before we had another conflict.
And yeah, a long time before we had another. Yep, exactly.
What sort of things did you haul? I mean, trucking in the military, I think, could cover a whole host of things, but what particularly was your specialty?
I mean, two things. I was a heavy truck unit originally, 911s. We hauled tanks and stuff like that. And then we switched, and then I was a fuel haul unit, line haul unit, hauled fuel, or diesel fuel, stuff like that. We had like Freightliner tractors, and we got new 915s. They were Freightliners, and I think they were 7,000 gallon fuel tanks or something like that. And hauled fuel for here in the States, we hauled some fuel for the Navy and for the Air Force and stuff like that.
So talk a little bit about the vehicles you drove, because it sounds like these were truly big rigs. I mean, these weren't smaller trucks like you sometimes see. Talk a little bit about them and how they compare to commercial trucks.
Yeah, the 911s were huge, of course. They're huge, and they haul an Army tank. And I had the old 911s. The new ones are pretty cool. They're a lot nicer, I should say. I mean, ours were neat too, the heads. And so we had those and hauled tanks, and we had a big multi-axle, like gooseneck type trailer. And then when they're like 50-ton winch, so you could pull the tank up on there if it was disabled. And then with fuel tanker units, those trucks were pretty much like a commercial truck. They weren't a 6x6 type truck at all. They had the Series 60 Detroit engine in them, and where the old ones had the old Detroits, and they had a automatic transmission was doing anything, but they were just pretty much like a road tractor. The interior of them, I mean, of course they had vinyl floor mats, but the interior was just like a Freightliner day cab. In fact, the first semi I bought, my FLD 120, because that's what they were FLDs 120. It was pretty much the same truck, and other than I had a Cummins and it had a Detroit. But as far as the dash and all that stuff, they were pretty much the same. And mine had a sleeper, but other than that, they're pretty much the same truck.
Wow, so you really did have a nice transition from one to the other.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like I said, that was the line on. Those trucks weren't meant for off-road or anything like that. They were to pick up fuel at a port or a fuel station and take it out, not necessarily to the front line, but to the front line fuel stations.
I'm wondering, you hear about different positions people have within the Army, different duties they have, and the relative difficulty of one versus another. I mean, you mentioned all the training to fly a helicopter, for example. How would you say that trekking compares to some of the other things people do in the military? Is it better? Is it worse? Give us an idea.
Oh, I thought trucking in the Army was great. I loved it. And if you like to drive and stuff, and of course, I had the love of trucks. If I don't know. I guess if you have a passion for something, it's always fun. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the training, because training for trucking in the military was, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, and they had you started out in 5 tons and deuce and ass in 5 tons, and you drove around on these obstacle courses and through the mud and over the hills, and being a hillbilly from southeastern Ohio, that was, that's just second nature to go mudding. So it was fun to go mudding in them great big 6x6 trucks, and you'd go out at night and do blackout drive and wear the night vision goggles and all that kind of stuff. So that was always fun. I like that stuff. But in trucking and training in the military, you do a lot of range stuff that people don't really think about. Like, you learn for ambushes, and if they ambush your convoys and different kinds of stuff like that, and how to handle that and drive through those type of situations and hot zones and stuff like that.
Well, you mentioned that training, for example, what to do when you're dealing with an ambush or something like that. And obviously the military has to train you for some very dangerous and difficult situations. How do you think that type of training helped you when you did make the transition to commercial trucking?
Well, trucking in the Army is a lot different than trucking commercially in some aspects. Of course, the operation of the vehicle and the mechanics of that, and that's all the same. But you ride a convoy a lot. Yeah, you're with other people a lot more than what you are like when you're out there by yourself in a truck. But it's still different. I think the military, where it helped me, is I drove enough, and I volunteered for anything I could to go somewhere, because I like to drive and stuff. And then as time went on, I was a lead driver and a squad leader for my company. But with that being, or my platoon, excuse me. But with that being said, you just had more confidence. I felt more confidence when I went around. I mean, I had my CDL when I turned 21 that I'd, from my military training, and I felt confident, probably a lot more confident than others, because I started at the folks with the big orange trucks, because at the time you either drove an orange truck or a yellow truck when you were 21, or whatever color the JB Hunt trucks are, and I went with orange. And but with that being said, you had to go to a training thing for a couple weeks. I already had my CDL, so I didn't have to do a lot of stuff the other people, but it's just I felt more confident than the other people. There's a lot of stuff. I think that helped. I think trucking not trucking, I'm sorry, but the military as a whole, the greatest thing I came away with, and I think anybody comes away with, is diversity, and you get with people and learning the differences in people and cultures, because America's a great country and we're all the same and we all follow the same flag and salute the same flag, but we're all different. I mean, it's a lot different where I'm from in southeastern Ohio, even than what it is in Columbus, Ohio, or Cleveland, or, just in our state, there's so much diversity. And, so, I was fortunate enough to go on vacations and stuff as a kid. I was lucky there, my family and stuff, but still, we never really left our world, I guess you say. When you're thrown in with 60 other people from all over the United States, and you got to learn to get along, accomplish one mission, you learn how to get along with people and how to deal with people. And I think that was the greatest lesson. I wish that more people would have that today, and not getting on a soapbox, but I really wish people would be that way more, because everybody's mad at everybody about everything right now on social media, and hey, and you forgot to remember where people come from. We're not all the same, and it doesn't make them right, it doesn't make them wrong, but we're all a product of where we were raised and where we are, and you go through that, and that's a good thing, and you shouldn't forget where you come from, but we can always improve. And sometimes you ought to give people the benefit of the doubt. They're not being mean or being bad, they're just it's just what they're saying. So, and again, that's my soapbox, but that's the greatest thing I think I got from the military, was just that learning to understand and relate and get along with other people. Even though we may look at things from a different angle, we can still put our heads together and accomplish that mission.
Excellent. Well, Lewie, thank you very much for telling us about this. It's been very interesting.
It was my pleasure. And next time we do this, I have a great story about being a truck driver when I was in basic training that we can share.
We'll definitely do that. I've been talking with OOIDA Executive Vice President Louis Pugh about his experience driving a truck in the U.S. Army and how it led to his career behind the wheel of a commercial motor vehicle. Once again, all this week, we are celebrating Mission Military Appreciation and raising money for the Truckers for Troops program to support our troops and veterans. If you want to take part, you can join OOIDA or renew your membership for a discounted rate. 10% of that will go into the fund. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.